right. Let's talk about the Duelists. Welcome back to Hollywood versus Cleveland, salty movie and media reviews. This week we're going to knock out director Ridley Scott's first feature film, The Duelists, from 1977. The screenplay was written by Gerard Vaughan Hughes, based on Joseph Conrad's short story, The Duel. Ridley Scott, John, of course, directed Alien, Blade Runner, Thelma and Louise, and the list goes on and on. In 1977, The Duelists had some great company in terms of movies coming out this year. Star Wars, Saturday Night Fever, Slapshot, Eraserhead. 1 year before this, you had Taxi Driver and Rocky, and you had Kubrick's Barry Lyndon 2 years before this in 1975. A similar movie, I think, in terms of genre and tone. Just to give you a sense of where we are in movie history. All right, let's get to it. IMDb describes The Duelist as France, 1801. Due to a minor perceived slight, mild-mannered Lieutenant Dubert is forced into a duel with hot-headed, irrational Lieutenant Ferrot. The disagreement ultimately results in scores of duels spanning several years. So, John, what did you think about the movie?
I really, really liked it. I found it really enjoyable. It's a different format than like a lot of movies. It's like this tableau format where you're basically peeking in on them at various times during a long sequence, mostly the Napoleonic Wars, 1800 roughly to 1815. It's just a little bit different. You know, you're sort of checking in on these people, these very different people. They're different personality types, but they're both sort of honor bound. They both have a sense of honor. And it's just interesting how that slices through the two different personalities.
I have submitted to your notions of honor long enough. You will now submit to mine.
So we have these hussars who are like sort of noble soldiers in an era where, you know, the aristocracy still has people going into combat. And of course, they're taking up higher ranks. And there's some rules around these insulted duels that they must comply with because they're honor bound.
You have insulted me!
I have strained my patience in order not to do so.
And I demand an apology.
Including, you can't have a duel if you're of a different rank than the other person.
The 7th Hussars have come to Lubeck. Ferrot is behind you. I'm sorry.
Make out his rank.
Captain.
Yeah, I mean, just a different style of movie, a different way of looking at characters over time. And, you know, the background characters change during these sequences. You know, there are characters when the movie opens, including his friend, this doctor, who we're sort of expecting to see again.
Good point.
He never shows up again. I mean, he was only there during that first sequence. There's two sequences where this lover that Dubert takes in, she's in two sequences, but that's it for her. And then, of course, the woman he ends up marrying, he only meets her in the last sequence. So basically, with everybody else in the entire movie is just sort of a rotating cast. So really, it's just about these two.
Right.
And they're very different characters.
And we're definitely siding with Dubert. You know, Dubert is the reasonable, rational one here.
I believe you're really quite a madman.
You draw your sword.
I will be delighted to fight you at the first opportunity.
You fight now.
At this moment, I'm here on duty, and you are under arrest.
Now!
For dueling, you ape!
Now! You fight now.
Where?
And it's funny to me, or it's interesting to see these guys, two opposites, enthralled in this ongoing, like you said, 16-year ridiculous battle over honor. Here we have Dubert, who is able to go through society with his wit and charm.
I must ask you to pardon this intrusion. I'm here on military business, which is a lamentable reason for invading your drawing room.
Come again this evening and plead your forgiveness.
You are most gracious.
But it does not work on Ferrot.
Right.
Schnapps?
I guess that's kind of the point of the movie, right? It's like, what happens when somebody who is really good at maneuvering through social situations gets confronted by a guy who is out of control, revengist, like ridiculous.
I agree with you. It's like, what do you do? What do you do? What does a sophisticated intelligent do when you've got this pit bull hell-bent on violence and you can't reason with him?
Ferro intends to kill you.
He's most unreasonable.
The enemies of reason have a certain blind look. He has that look, don't you think?
What can I do?
So there's an interesting thing that happens in that last third where the Napoleon is defeated, right? And so everybody in France is sort of either a royalist, wanting the Bourbons back in power, or they're with Napoleon. And this honor concept comes up again. It's like, are you loyal to Napoleon? And so that contributes to his drunk friend being contemptuous of him. Is he feels like he's betrayed Napoleon because he was in Napoleon's army.
Oh, Gabriel Ferro was right. Poor devil. You always said you were a slippery fellow.
How is General Ferro?
Well, that's how they see him. That's how they see intelligent, politically smart people. They see them as slippery. But hey, if slippery means surviving and not being a drunk on the street because there's been a regime change, then, I personally would rather be a little slippery.
And you're right. I mean, Dubert has a practical kind of view of it. And he ends up marrying into this family of royalists, of course, because they're aristocracy. And he sort of deftly, during his wedding, he gets called out by the dad.
God save the king.
God save the king.
So tell us, what fate would you choose for the ogre?
I believe the Emperor chose his own fate. It was his habit to do so. I learnt my trade in his service, as did Marshal Saint-Cyr. The king's army will have more realists than royalists. I have just agreed to terms with this lady, and I'm much too tired for further questioning.
And he sort of deftly navigates that. So, I mean, he's basically a pragmatist, just doing what he needs to do.
It has been said that you do not love the Emperor. We belong to him.
I have entertained the notion that I may belong to myself.
Great points, John. And I want to quickly touch on the tone in The Duelists. I love the absurdist tone in this movie. I mean, these are duels to the death, and yet everyone is awfully polite.
Morning. The combat should be well attended. I hear that Lebrun has given a breakfast party. I hope the weather improves for them.
But for me, capturing the absurdist tone perfectly is the sneeze moment. It's also humorously absurd. Not only the ongoing duel between Ferro and Dubert, but the social norms surrounding it. Also, in a movie like this, where clearly it's about two people, it's definitely a character study between Dubert and Ferro. But to me, this is 100% Dubert's story, because he's the one we see change over the course of the movie, while Ferro doesn't change at all. He's got a single track until maybe the final moment of the film. So when we talk about the story of Dubert,
I'm not fanatical enough to persevere in this absurdity.
What is the story? What is his story?
If he so earnestly desires to kill me, he will kill me. Damn it, kill him!
I think the answer lies in what I think is the key question of the movie. Why does he let Ferro live at the end of the movie? And not only does he let Ferro live, he saves him arguably 3 times in the movie. The first time is after the first duel, when Dubert sends his friend the doctor to go treat Ferro, who he had just injured.
Cause a quarrel obscure. Still, we appear to be more civilized. I mean, a tomcat would never dream of sending a surgeon to another tomcat.
The second obvious big moment where Dubert saves Ferrot is when he goes to the Albert Finney character and asks for Ferrot to be taken off the execution list because Napoleon is no longer in power.
By all accounts, he is a rabid Bonapartist.
So is every trooper and grenadier in the army, as your excellency knows. General Ferrot hasn't the brains to make himself dangerous to anyone. Rather, he could not conceivably hurt the state.
Meaning, he's still a threat to me. So why is Dubert doing this? So Ferrot gets out of prison. He's a free man. He no longer has a death sentence. And when he first hears that Dubert's in town, he wants to go fight him again. So again, why did Dubert do that?
Is this fellow a relation of yours?
No.
Intimate friend?
No, not exactly. We've had a long association.
Finally, in the final moments of the film, in the final duel, when he has Ferrot dead to rights.
Go on, kill me. Now!
But of course, although it must have been tempting, Dubert does not shoot. So that's 3 times that he spared Ferrot's life. Ferrot's been a huge pain in his side for 15 years. Why does he spare his life? To me, the answer comes in the horseback duel. Dubert is terrified. There's no doubt about it. They're showing close up of his hands, shaking, drawing his sword. He's terrified. He's having flashbacks of Ferrot. And they start marching at each other and they clash. And they sort of jump cut to someone bleeding from their head. And at first, I think it's fair to say we kind of think that's Dubert. He was the one who was so scared. It's not. It's Ferrot.
Captain Ferrot has taken a slight cut across the forehead, but until the blood has stopped, he can't see. I regret the duel must be discontinued.
But right after that, Dubert rides off, and there's these townsfolk, and they've got like a wagon of hay, and they're in the road. Yeah! And I'm like, what is that moment? Like, what does that mean? And it means he was emboldened by his victory there. He was emboldened. He feels good. He was terrified. He did it. He went through it. And now he's won for the moment, and he's feeling good. So my argument is Dubert sees Ferrot as someone who has, in a sense, toughened him up. He was never a coward. I'm not saying they painted him out to be a coward, but this guy has toughened him up. Before the final duel, Dubert is not scared at all. He's sitting there calmly eating fruit. So I feel over the course of the movie, while Ferrot never changes until the final moment, Dubert, we see him mature, grow up, face death, and succeed in his career and personal life in terms of getting engaged to this young woman that he says he's in love with.
Sir, kick for the general.
And that's why I think he spares Ferrot's life, because he is grateful on some level for their encounters over the years that has turned him into this steady, brave man. Now, John, let's talk about the ending of the movie. To Ferrot's surprise, Dubert spares his life. Tell me what you thought about the ending, and tell me about what you found out about some of those final images of the film.
The final scene, we see Ferrot standing in his Napoleonic hat, overlooking this sunset scene, and he's basically a man without a purpose now, because, you know, in some ways, his entire purpose was to get revenge on Dubert, or to get revenge in general, maybe on life. I mean, the movie opens with him dueling another guy. So clearly he's just constantly in a state of frustration and anger and revenge, and that's just, it consumes him. And so the parallels to Napoleon are sort of in your face. That last sequence is meant to mimic a painting by Benjamin Robert Hayden.
Oh, cool.
Who in 1830 did a somewhat famous painting of Napoleon overlooking a sunset in his exile in his military outfit with his military hat on. And it's, it's the same concept. It's a man without a purpose.
Cool.
Napoleon all his life was determined to conquer the world and had this relentless sense of conquering, just like Thoreau's relentless sense of revenge. I mean, they're sort of similar. And when those things are taken away from those guys, they have nothing. They have nothing to do, nowhere to go. And of course, it's kind of a happy ending because Dubert goes back and gives the orange to his wife.
Where have you been?
Basically, the indication is it's going to live like the rest of his life, coalescing with his wife and having a family with her. And the honorable man who's reasonable wins, and the honorable man who is sort of stubborn and revenge bound loses. And then in some ways it would have been better if he was killed from his perspective, because now what is he going to do?
He's gonna be like his friend in the street.
Exactly.
You took care to play safe, eh?
And Napoleon was defeated, and they decided not to kill him. Instead, they exiled him twice. The first exile, they just send him back to his island, and he's in charge of. I mean, he was at least in charge of stuff, but he was not allowed to leave. But he leaves, comes back to France, and for I guess 100 days or whatever, he's trying to take control again. And they're like, "This time you're going way out to sea, and you're not in charge of anything." And then he just dies on this island ignominiously, tuberculosis or something, which is not, a guy like Napoleon.
Yeah,
doesn't want to die that way. He wants to die in battle, in honor, doing something for his country. And instead, he just slowly wastes away on a remote island. And, same fate for Thoreau. He's going to slowly waste away. The worst possible outcome for him. So in some ways, it's more than a happy ending. It's the antagonist is like punished, and your protagonist is victorious.
Dude, I love that parallel between Napoleon and Thoreau. I had not thought about that at all, and I didn't know about that painting. That's super cool. And I think that final moment of Harvey Keitel looking dumbfounded and lost, and I think Thoreau is just kind of like, his eyes just grew up. We came up with this eyes grew up thing from the movie Brokeback Mountain. I turned to my brother Joe and I go, those eyes just grew up.
Yeah.
You were talking about that landscape being a painting. Frank Tidy was the cinematographer on The Duelists. And the ending shots are absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
And dude, Frank Tidy, another cinematic masterpiece that he did the camera work on was in 1992.
Bob, get down!
But they're getting away!
Stop! Or my mom will shoot!
All right, John, take it easy, my friend. Oh, while we're still recording, real quick, just in terms of ADR, I need you to say just a few words to patch in where the audio dropped out on the first one.
Okay.
This is where just say Steve is.
Steve is.
Than
me.
And then say smarter. All right, man. Have a good day.
Peace in the Middle East, and thanks for talking about The Duelists with me. That was a good movie to watch.
Thanks for telling me about it. I loved it, honestly. It is a great movie, and it's a great movie that people, who may not have seen it, they should check it out for sure. All right, peace.